Welcome to the Nutrition Hero Podcast with Dr. Brad Watts, making heroes in functional medicine and clinical nutrition. Now, here's Dr. Watts.
What's up, Nutrition Hero family? This is Dr. Brad Watts, and you are listening to the Nutrition Hero Podcast. Welcome to another episode. I'm your host, as always, and today I have a smattering of topics that we're going to go through. And first and foremost, I appreciate Dr. Brandon Crater for being available for our last podcast episode. I hope you had a chance to listen to that. There are a myriad of things that Dr. Crater was able to just glaze over, so to speak, that we could have talked for a whole hour on those individual topics alone. So I appreciate his time. He's a busy dude. And obviously, anytime you can get somebody with an experience like he has had to spend time with you, it's quality. And so I went back myself and listened to that podcast again. And there are things that I just find myself writing down every single time I get to interview somebody, and I just follow up on it. Something that I have found to be very, very useful. So anyhow, take advantage of that. Grab a pen, piece of paper, listen to the podcast, write down some of the things that you resonate with, especially Dr. Crater, or, we had one the other day with Dr. Ruben Valdez, and a lot of things in that one as well that I found to be useful as far as how to create, how to promote better function out of yourself, your clinic, your lifestyle, whatever it might be. The L word there, lifestyle. So, all right. Over the years, I've had an opportunity to be able to sit in and participate in many thousands of cases, helping people that have chronic disease from a functional medicine perspective. And one of the things that I've found is that inevitably, people are controlled by their past, by their history. And what's interesting, to me anyway, is that when people are controlled by their history, it's super short-sighted, yet their health issues are just beyond their reach. And if we can kind of create a word picture around that for you, I would like to be able to explain and paint a picture to your experience. So you have somebody sitting in front of you, and they might have diabetes, they might have thyroid condition, gut issues, maybe a neurologic condition, whatever it is, whoever you're serving, and their condition is farther out in front of them than their sight is. Okay, so think about that. Their condition is farther out as far as the reach is concerned. Their condition's farther out than what their sight is. So they don't really know how to grab a hold of their health. They don't really know how to grab a hold of their lifestyle and begin promoting better health. And one of the reasons is because they're not seeing far enough. Well, one of the things that I've come up with over the years in communicating with people is, and I don't say it this way to them, but the strategy behind it is you want to feed their destiny, not feed their history. And so all of my conversations with patients are surrounding that type of mentality. You want to feed their destiny, not their history. So you have to be unreasonable, I guess is the word I'm looking for. You have to be unreasonable when it comes to their story. Somebody sitting in front of you diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which right now in the medical literature is not really in the literature, but in the medical community is considered to be a chronic degenerative condition that doesn't go away, and there's nothing you can do about it. And, sans take your medication and maybe get lap band surgery and reverse your condition, because after all diabetes comes from being overweight, right? Like, that's the mentality that's out there in the media right now. And you have to be unreasonable with the way that you approach these things. And one of the aspects to that is making sure you don't buy into the story, because a patient's going to be sitting in front of you, and if you are approaching the conversation with any level of reasonability or any level of normal thinking, you're going to get sucked into their story, and you can't do that, right? Because otherwise you're going to be feeding into their history, feeding into their diagnosis as well. And then you're both going to be stuck in that pattern, and it's not going to help anybody. So you need to be unreasonable when it comes to your communication with your patients. And the reason I say unreasonable is because unreasonable, there's like some characteristics around being unreasonable that I want to highlight here. So if you're going to feed somebody's destiny instead of their history, you're going to unreasonably discuss their history. You're going to discuss their history as if it was just a thing that happened and no longer has a bearing on today or tomorrow. You're going to discuss their history without any emotional attachment to their story, right? You can empathize with them, but you don't want to sympathize with them. And so there's a huge difference there that it took me a lot of years and a lot of patient visits to understand the fine difference between empathy and sympathy. You don't want sympathy, you want empathy. And in this instance, some of your patients might really desire sympathy. You have to be unreasonable and not give it to them, right? Like, you can't have sympathy for them, otherwise you're both just going to agree that they should stay stuck and keep getting beat up by their health. So being unreasonable is a good thing. Being unreasonable, I'll say it again, being unreasonable is a good thing. Now, if you're going to feed somebody's destiny and not their history, which is, I guess if we have a theme for today, that's what it's going to be, you're going to come up against something that scientists describe as, they call it the Einstellung Effect, okay? Einstellung, Einstellung. And when we look at the Einstellung Effect, it's something that I got interested in, and maybe I'm just a nerd in this way, but I got interested in it a few years ago when I couldn't figure out why patient after patient after patient was continuing to make ridiculous decisions, even though I'm presenting them with new and different opportunities to feel better, to function better, to control their health. And so I started digging in on it, and what I found is there's this thing called the Einstellung Effect, and I'm just going to read you a description of it, because once you hear this, it's almost comical to me, because you, as a doctor, as a provider, as a nutritionist, whoever you are, if you're seeing patients on a daily basis, you're coming up against this thing all the time. All the time. It's crazy. So, anyway, the Einstellung effect occurs when the brain repeatedly solves or thinks or tries to solve a problem using the same thought process. When the brain is presented with a new means to solving the same problem, the brain always prefers the old process over the new process, even though it's a better and more efficient solution to the problem. Einstellung literally means setting or installation. Now, if you think of that, they're going to have a flood of people that are automatically presented before you in your head right now as you're like envisioning them, and you go, oh, maybe that's what's going on with Jim, or maybe that's what's going on with Linda. But the point is that when people are predisposed to making terrible decisions just because it's something they've been presented with over and over again, that's something that we, as a provider in an arena of healthcare that is new and different for them, have to overcome. How do we overcome it? Right? We can't overcome it with logic, because logic is what they're using, and logic in this instance is pretty stupid for them, right? So we have to overcome it by basically attaching to their story, but not their history. Okay, so follow me on this here. So this is a little bit more of the art of functional medicine, of the art of going through patient visits, but you need to attach to their story in a way that you don't buy into the history, right? You attach their story to their destiny. And for most people that have chronic disease, their story is going to be a comeback story. It's not going to be a story like a tragedy. Their story is going to be a comeback story. And that's the beauty of functional medicine. That's why after all these years, I still am participating in the functional medicine realm, because once you experience that comeback story, you want to see it again and again and again and again. It's like that drug. It's like that thing that keeps you coming back and flipping the light switch on every day to your office and sitting down and saying, well, what do we have today, right? Because that story of life change, that story of progress is your patient's destiny. It's your job to help them see that. So when you can feed their destiny, not their history, that's you being unreasonable. You being unreasonable. This happened to me just yesterday. And there was somebody that was sitting through a patient visit with them, and they happened to have this crazy, ridiculous rash. This crazy, ridiculous rash that goes up both sides of the middle of their legs, so to speak, up into the genitalia region. And they have this rash that will not go away. It doesn't matter what they put on it. They've tried myriad of medications, diets, supplementation, etc. And they're sitting in front of me talking as if they want me to agree with them that they're a lost cause. Well, if anybody's ever met me, I'm never going to agree with you on that. And I don't care what your issue is, I'm not going to agree with you that it's a lost cause. And the reason I say that is because the power of the wisdom that's in the human body is just amazing. And then secondly, the power of being a detective in the functional medicine space combined with the wisdom that's in your body is it's a duo that oftentimes will look unbeatable. It's a duo that very rarely gets defeated. That's the cool part about what we do. So in this situation where I was yesterday, the patient was almost getting agitated with me and irritated with me when I wasn't buying into the history of their story, right? So I was getting more and more excited the more he talked, and he was getting more and more depressed the more that he talked. And the problem was is that he wasn't appreciating that I didn't carry the same mindset as him. So this gentleman is 77 years old, right? And at 77 years old, he is definitely my senior, and he is definitely a gentleman that is to be respected in all other forms of life, in my opinion. And so he kind of took it as an assault on his character a little bit. And so the only reason that I know that is because I called him on it. Okay, so this is your job when you're being unreasonable. Your job is to make sure that you say what you see in the patient visit. And so this is something that I learned from Dr. Crater years ago, and he didn't get into this a whole lot on our podcast on the last episode, but he is an expert, the best I've ever seen at saying what he sees. And it's an amazing situation when you can say what you see, because things change, and you can move somebody from being tied to their history to being tied to their destiny. So how it happened is I sensed the gentleman becoming a little bit more irritated with me not buying in or giving him sympathy. I was giving him empathy, but not sympathy. And I said, is it irritating you that I'm not agreeing with you that this is a lost cause? And I just said it outright, just like that. And the gentleman said, yes, yes, that's exactly how I feel. And the reason I can say that is because most people, if they want sympathy and you're not going to give it to them, that's how they're going to feel. So you can just say that automatically, okay? But one of the things that allows you to do is to talk through it with them and to be able to tell them, hey, look, if I am sympathetic with you, we're both going to be stuck on the decision that, yes, this is a lost cause, and you're already having a hard enough time moving from that position on your own. You don't need my help staying there, okay? So what we want to do at this point is we want to figure out, what does the future look like for you? Number two, is the future bright or does the future suck? And number three, if the future is bright, is it something that you would choose to participate in? Or are you happy being stuck in the history of your condition? And so this is super important, because the Einstellung Effect is telling this gentleman that he's going to go through an office visit. And as long as he's having a doctor have attention on him, then he's doing what he's supposed to do. Not healing, by the way, not healing at all, just continuing to search out new doctors to tell him that he's a lost cause. So this is really interesting, and this kind of gets into the psychosis almost of the situation when people have a chronic disease or a chronic condition. And so I just, again, want to highlight this. Your job is to be unreasonable because you're going to feed their destiny, not their history. And again, I talk about destiny because I believe in destiny. I don't think that people are designed to be sick and broken and busted and disgusted, right? I think that people are designed to be fruitful and they're designed to be profitable and in all aspects of life. And people are designed to have like vitality, some uh, spark, if you will, right? And so when I see somebody that's losing their spark or they're tired or they're running out of their spark, I almost create it as my own personal mission. I'm going to feed their destiny, whether they hang out with me in the long run or not. I'm going to feed their destiny, right? So you're going to speak that into people. Now, when you have a chronic condition sitting in front of you and you have this Einstellung effect in play, which remember, the brain's going to choose an old solution to a problem just because it's familiar, right? When that happens, you have to hit pause on that tape immediately. How you do that is by asking questions. And so one of the things that I've found to be a very effective way at stopping this is the rule of sevens. And I don't know where I came up with this. I might have mentioned this in a previous episode. But the rule of sevens, you will get to the bottom of almost any issue if you can ask why 7 times. And you're not going to ask why like just point blank, why. You're going to ask why undercover, like, how do you mean? Talk more about that if you would. That would be awesome, right? So one of the things that I find is that most people, they say one thing, but they mean another. And so if you ask why enough times, you're going to actually get to the root of how they feel. You're going to get to the root of what they mean. And if they say, well, I don't know, 'cause, like, that's not an answer. So you're going to reframe the question. Don't let them off the hook. Keep reframing until you've gone 7 layers deep, and you're going to get your answer. So being unreasonable means that no matter what somebody says to you, you're willing to go to the next layer. Being unreasonable means that you're willing to have confrontation, not bad confrontation, but you're willing to be confrontational and be able to communicate with your patient in a way that nobody else is going to be willing to do with them, right? Nobody else is going to be willing to sit down with them and to have this confrontation time and time again. All right. One of the things that I find is that most people have this thing where they're aiming for something like do, be, have. I'm going to do something to be something so I can have something. Like I'm going to go see this doctor. That's my do, so that I can be a patient of his so that I can have better health. So a do, be, have mentality. What's interesting is that the health is not in the doctor's office. The health is in the patient's body, right? The edges of a cut heal together. You're not the one doing it. You're showing them that. You can demonstrate it to them. What we're doing is we're basically creating a lifestyle that allows them to refocus on the thing they already have. This is key here. This is key. If you're going to feed somebody's destiny, you got to know, you have to have the map in your head, so to speak. And this is really key, all right? So do, be, have is the way of a market-based economy. Do this, to be this, to have this, buy my product, right? But what's interesting is the healing is in the patient already. They're the one that heals the edge of a cut together. They're the ones that will heal a wound. They're the ones that will heal, like they don't have a headache that's just permanent, right? Unless they have a tumor or something. They're the ones that have the healing in them already. It's our job to be able to highlight that, to be able to focus on that and bring it to light. Because whatever you look at is what you become, right? It's like the, what is it? The law of the observer effect. Okay, so whatever you look at is what you become. That's how goals work, etc. That's how healing works with your patients. So if they're stuck because of the Einstellung effect, if they're stuck with this crappy mentality where they're just like perseverating on their disease condition, what do you think is going to get worse over time? Their disease condition. So your job is to be unreasonable enough that you're not going to talk about it every single time you see them. You're going to talk about the healing aspect that's already in them, but they're just not looking at it, right? This is this is like 8 layers deep in the art of functional medicine here, but this is stuff that I want people to know about, because this is stuff that takes you from just servicing patients and going through programs with them to actually affecting their life in a way where they will never look at you or themselves the same ever again. So the healing is in the patient already. You know this. You witness this, but how do you harness this? That's the key. How do you harness what they already have? You harness it by identifying it. It could be as simple as telling them, we're going to work together, and that's great. And I want you to notice that you're going to get better and better because I'm going to teach you how to eat well, think well, and move well. But even more than that, we're going to highlight this thing in your body that you already have. You can heal the edges of a cut together pretty well right now. Is that right? They're going to say, yes. And you say, that same power in your body that heals the edges of a cut together is what is going to reverse whatever your chronic condition is. It's what's going to drive the healing. Now, we can hook up to that like a stagecoach and horses, right? We can hook up to the horses, but we're not the ones doing the pulling here, okay? Now, it's our job to maintain the connection. It's our job to maintain the lifestyle that promotes the function, but it's the job of what's in your body already to do the healing. Now, this is super important because here is where you're going to plug in their destiny, right? I'll ask a patient point blank, Jill, do you think it's your future, your destiny to be sick and broken? Right? Because if it's your destiny, why are you here? So you already know the answer, because if they believe it's their destiny to be sick and broken all the time, they're not going to be in your office fighting destiny, right? Because most people have this thing with like fate, that they think, oh, if it's going to be, it's going to be. It's the way it is. There's nothing you can do to control it. And I don't believe in fate, by the way, because when you look at it, you totally have a say in this stuff. You totally have a say in your health. You totally have a say in your future and your destiny. And what's cool is that you can participate in it, or you can throw in the towel and just say, oh, whatever the fates decide. And people that have a chronic health condition have this weird relationship with fate because they almost feel like giving up. And I think it's my own personal mission, most of the time, to be able to highlight this, that you have a choice in this. If you thought that you were destined to be broken and sick the rest of your life, why are you here? What's the point? And I'll have that conversation with a patient, because that's how you, as an unreasonable doctor, as an unreasonable nutritionist, whoever you are unreasonable. As an unreasonable provider, that's how you cut through the BS. You identify at the very core, their very heart, why are you here? Right? They're here, and they might start crying, but really what they're going to do is they're going to tell you, because I want help. Why do you want help? Because I don't think that I'm destined to be broken the rest of my life. Okay? Now, they might speak otherwise. They might say, it's just the way it always is. I never get better, etc., etc. But their actions speak louder than their words. They're in your office, right? They're searching for something because at their very core, they know that they're not designed to be sick. And so what's really awesome is you have an opportunity to be able to facilitate that part of their destiny. You have an opportunity to be able to facilitate that part of that patient's story. Are you willing to do it? Are you willing to step in and be that guy, be that girl that stands there in front of them and says, I agree with you, you're not designed to be broken? Or are you the doctor, are you the provider that says, yeah, that sucks, that's a chronic condition, there's nothing we can do about it, you should probably just learn how to live with it, right? Now, I have gotten myself into a bunch of pickles over the years, right? A bunch of situations where, because I'm so unreasonable, because I have this mentality with every single patient that I see, sometimes you end up wanting it worse for the patient than they do. You want it more than they do. So you're going to have to guard against that. But one of the ways you do that is by their goals. And you don't take on cases that don't have goals that match your level of unreasonableness. Okay, so if the patient needs to lose 100 pounds, that's cool. It's going to take a little while, but that's a unreasonable goal. That is an unreasonable request. If they want to lose 100 pounds in a month, that's ridiculous. Okay, so you get the difference. So you want to make sure that you are in a situation where you are being unreasonable for the patient's benefit, right? But not to your detriment. So it's an art in and of itself. Play that balance. Play that game and see how you do. So, feeding the patient's destiny, not their history. Don't buy into the story. Hear the story, empathize with the story, but don't buy into the story, right? There are tons of other doctors that are going to buy into the story for them. They don't need you to be another person that sits there and says, oh, you're right. That is really terrible. You're right. There's nothing we can do, okay? So, for instance, you have a situation when a patient's on medication. Let's say maybe they're on simvastatin and Lyrica. That's a good one. So, and I'll talk about this just because those two things create a cocktail that creates a lot of problems for people. But let's say you have somebody that's on simvastatin and Lyrica. And they come to you because they have diffuse body pains. And they're like, doctor, you need to help me get rid of these body pains because I've had them for the last 10 years. Doctor has me on Lyrica and it doesn't help. And now I have these issues and all this stuff. And the story's there. And, you know, I'm thinking about a wheelchair coming up, right? And you're empathizing with them, but you're not going to sympathize with them. Although if you sympathize with them, you're going to be like, yes, let me go get your wheelchair for you. If you empathize with them, you're going to be like, yes, that stinks. Let's keep talking. Okay? And so what's happening is they're telling you this story and you're putting together this information and you go, hey, I am a functional medicine provider. I'm a detective. I'm going to figure this out. So you go through some testing and you find out that just the gold mine that is PubMed, by the way, you can go type in any medication into PubMed and you're going to find research articles that are going to be 8-10 pages deep. And the more refined you are at your search skills, the more information you'll be able to pull out of PubMed. But this is actually something that I saw in clinic here, okay? Somebody comes up to you and has this story, and you're like, I wonder what's going on. So sure enough, find out that Lyrica and simvastatin create a cocktail that's basically like a stick of dynamite in the body, and it creates something called rhabdomyolysis. Well, if you know what rhabdomyolysis is, it's a situation that is not helpful for body pain, not helpful for fatigue, not helpful for life, really. And what's interesting is that I'm just going to give you a diagnosis here, a definition, not a diagnosis. Don't worry, right? Rhabdomyolysis is a condition in which damaged skeletal muscle breaks down rapidly, and we get muscle pain, weakness, vomiting, confusion. We get the situation where they have tea-colored urine. It looks like iced tea, which is kind of crazy. Irregular heartbeats. The kidneys get stressed out. Right? So how many of your patients have chronic kidney disease and they're on statin medications? Yes. How many of them are also on Lyrica? Right? So you start putting the pieces of the puzzle together and you go, wonder if they have rhabdomyolysis. Well, what's cool is that you have the ability to funnel them in the right direction so they can actually get off of this garbage and move into an arena where they're healing again. Okay? So the problem is, though, is that the patient is looking for medication because of the Einstellung Effect. They're like, well, I need a Lyrica because of the pain. Well, not if it's causing this dynamite in your body called rhabdomyolysis. And in this instance, there are cocktails like this all the time in medicine. But because we have sympathy instead of empathy, because we're not unreasonable enough, we don't do the work to dig in on these things and figure it out for the patient, so the patient's left with this chronic condition where they feel like trash, and they're on these medications that sometimes are causing them to feel like trash. So what if somebody has diabetes and they're on Lyrica for their neuropathy, but they already have kidney disease, and now they're on a medication for their cholesterol, and they're just going downhill big time, right? And so they start out with confusion. confusion, right? And so what happens is they get diagnosed with the early onset of Alzheimer's, or we have even, what's the new one? Age-related cognitive decline. And so one of these things that takes place is they go, oh, well, it's just the lifespan or the life cycle of the disease, diabetes, right? Diabetes of the brain, Alzheimer's disease. Type 3 diabetes is what they're calling it now in the medical literature. It's ridiculous, because if you're a functional medicine provider and you start putting the puzzle pieces together the right way and you go, oh, what if they have a condition, so meaning a genetic / medication-induced situation that's causing this confusion? And what if 65 years old isn't a long enough life for them? What if they're not ready to mail it in yet? If they're not ready to have being able to miss their grandkids' names because they have this confusion situation and nobody's looking at it as an accurate assessment. So if you are unreasonable, you're going to look at that diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's, you're going to go, oh, that's BS. Okay? I respect that your doctor wants to give you that diagnosis and think that they're helping you, but that's BS, because you're going to dig in further. You're going to be unreasonable enough to continue to just look under every nook and cranny, if I can say that. You're going to look under every carpet square. You are going to pick up the carpet, look underneath the carpet, and then set it back down. You're going to look everywhere, is what I'm trying to say, okay? Because you are unreasonable. If you're going to fight for somebody's destiny, you have to be in a spot where you don't take no for an answer and you don't take a diagnosis as law. If you take a diagnosis as law, then you are buying into a system that is not meant for progress, a system that is meant for managing disease, not health. Managing disease. Now, this is more of like an issue of conscience, right? Being unreasonable. And I'm going to highlight that for you because I want you to look inside right now and ask yourself, are you unreasonable enough? Are you unreasonable enough? I've interviewed two of the most unreasonable people I've ever met. Okay? And there's a reason that I've interviewed them first, above and beyond. The third one coming up might be the most unreasonable person I've ever met. And I'll give you that story when it comes. But the two people that I interviewed so far, Dr. Crater and Dr. Valdez, they are unreasonable to a point where people that have a hard time being around them are just out of their life. Okay? Because their passion for helping people is set on such a high level and to such a degree that if they are around people that cannot handle their level of unreasonableness, okay, I'm just creating words here tonight. If they can't handle their level of being unreasonable, they don't hang out with them anymore, right? Are you comfortable enough with your ability to be unreasonable to say that I can't hang out with you anymore if you don't like that? Because I am so tied to this being unreasonable that I am going to search out people's destinies for them with their health instead of buying in to their past, buying in to their history. Can you do it? Is the question. Can you do it? Homework, right? I'm going to give homework on a podcast. Oh, the humanity of it. But here's the homework. I want you to test your boundaries of being unreasonable. Test them, right? I'm not talking about being difficult. I'm talking about being unreasonable with your patients. Being difficult is a completely different story, okay? But being unreasonable, what do you let them get away with? What do you let yourself get away with? Are you buying into their destiny? Are you buying into your destiny? Or are you buying into your history? What is good enough? Are you being unreasonable with your health and theirs? Be unreasonable. You can do it. It's going to better your life. It's going to better your patients' lives. You are going to be serving them as a nutrition hero in ways that they cannot comprehend right now if you can amp up your level of being unreasonable. I'm Dr. Brad Watts. Catch you next time.